Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast. Today we got a return guest who we had on a couple weeks ago, but we want to dive a little bit deeper with him. We're talking to Mr. Sonny McCumpsey from Arkansas. Sonny, how are you?
How's everything going, guys?
Doing
I'm
pretty
doing
good.
well.
Doing good. Hey, I like that. I like that little eye candy you got sitting there on the desk next to you. Big old,
Yeah,
what is that, a Kansas buck? You
yeah.
said?
This is Kansas buck right here. We took it on film on our Arkansas Extreme Outdoors last year. So it's not a monster, but we had decoys out and everything played together. So we decided to take him and use our tag. So it's
Man.
pretty good deer. Normally I wouldn't shoot nothing that small, but I did, and obviously messed up. Seen a monster later in the season with nothing but a doe tag in my pocket. So.
Shoot, man. That's a monster where I come from. Jacob, how are you doing?
Doing well. I was going to let everybody know, again, all podcast guys are video podcasts now, so you can go over to YouTube and watch this right now. Maybe not the time you're listening, especially if you listen like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, but at some point today, this video is going to be up on YouTube. But Sonny, super excited. Yeah, I was going to say, Sonny, super excited to have you on the podcast. Again, like Andrew had mentioned, we had you and your cousin Michael Ball on the podcast probably about 2 months ago by this point. And we really kind of just barely grazed the surface of both of y'all's two hunting styles. So I had told y'all after the podcast was done, I'm like, we got to get y'all back on individually and give you your own, light per se on the podcast and really dive deep on some of the tactics and strategies that you really like to do. And one thing you mentioned the first episode that we had you on, which Andrew, can you look up real quick what the episode number was? I can't believe we didn't think about that beforehand. But on the first episode we had you on, you talked quite a bit about slip hunting or still hunting, kind of hunting without the use of a tree stand. And with you being in your part of Arkansas, a lot more mountainous part of the state, how you've had a tremendous success doing so. So that being said, can you give us maybe like a little bit of recap for maybe listeners that didn't listen to that episode? Which, Andrew, what episode?
480.
480.
480.
Episode 480. That's super easy to remember.
All right, guys. I was raised up down south, and there wasn't really nowhere to slip down there. It was always thickety and no visibility when you walk through the woods, and you always just startle all the animals. But where I hunt now, it's mountainous, and you can actually use the mountains to your advantage, just like tree stands. So, you just got to set a pattern up of where you want to go, and the best advice I got and what I've learned to do is, you need to set a day aside to do something like this if you're going to slip hunt for the day. And you're also scouting for a potential deer hunting spot, to put your climbing stand up or your ground blind or whatever you like to do. So you need to take your backpack and some food and maybe some cameras with you. And you need to spend all day out there. And you need to maybe take you some optics with you. And as you come over little ridges or mountaintops, you need to move slow. And matter of fact, you need to move slow all day and periodically stop. You move for 2 or 3 minutes, you need to stop for 2 or 3 minutes. And when you come to an area where you got a visual of a lot of 200 or 300 yards or 100 yards, you need to sit down and just sit down. Spend 15, 20 minutes there, because he's looking for you. So you just can't walk around. He's going to see you. He's looking for you more than you're looking for him. So that's where I've had a lot of my success. I move really slow. And I have not done it, but maybe once in my life, but I've walked into areas that you can't see. And it's really hard to do that one because in my eyes, that's where he's hiding at lots of times, unless he's traveling in the rut, because I've got proof that they travel all over the place. So instead of me thinking that the deer are just hiding from me all the time and being nocturnal, I got evidence now that, maybe they're just done went 3 miles away from me and they're not near me. So as far as the still hunting, stay out there all day long. Do not get in a hurry. Okay. And when you stop to where you can hide, stop to where you can take a shot. Just don't stop out in the wide open where you don't have a brace or no cover for if something happens. You got to be ready for the moment, and so you can capitalize on any opportunity you have to take the animal. Don't let him get away from you. So.
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited. So this is the episode, guys. If you're interested in and really in-depth understanding of slip hunting, and again, the kind of the art of just slipping through the woods in order to get shots. I think this is gonna be a really good episode for y'all to refer back to and really pay attention to for this fall. Sonny, before we really dive a lot more into some of the details on, again, the skills that it takes in order to slip hunt, when you moved out to your part of Arkansas, because originally you kind of hunted more so in like southern Arkansas, and you mentioned that in the first episode 480, we had you on, and just down there the habitat wasn't right for slip hunting. It was you talked about beforehand, extremely thick, a lot of pines, just really thick areas. And when you moved out to, kind of more the western part of the state, you got more in this more mountainous habitat. When you moved out there, did you have any kind of mentor or anybody out there that you kind of took some advice from, as in how to hunt those mountains? Or was a lot of this kind of just learned by failures going out there and trying to figure out what worked best for you?
Well, no, I had no mentor in order to, when I figured out the different terrains that I moved to. I took the basic skills that I learned from my father and my family of just, finding deer but obviously when you move up there, you can see. And down there, it's all flatland, and there's, you can never see anywhere from the ground. So by the time you walked up on the deer, if he was even walking towards you or anything, you've already startled him. He's gone. And so, no, I didn't have anybody teaching me. I learned it all on my own.
After your first year of hunting out there, what I'm trying to ask and kind of curious with is the skill set that you kind of learned with still hunting. How many years did it take for you to really start kind of getting that and really start being comfortable slip hunting? Where again, a lot of guys like myself grew up hunting out of tree stands, out of box blinds, and they're used to sitting still instead of kind of slipping through an area and putting yourself in the right position at different points of the day.
Well, it just progressed as every year went by. And I learned that, it has benefits of not sitting still, which in my opinion, sitting still is still the best way to, take a larger animal, because, he doesn't know you're there, and you can't smell you, you can't see you. There's different things like that. But one thing that I learned from still hunting, that when you startle an animal, okay, and you're out there during the peak of the rut or whatever, lots of times this animal's not alone, okay? This big buck deer or this buck deer or whatever, and he does not always know what you are. All right, so when I hunted down south, we couldn't use deer calls or grunt calls or things like that because we tried and it didn't work. So up there, I may have had somebody at the gas station tell me, you need to be carrying a grunt call around your neck. So I put it around my neck, and man, it's like leaving your bullets at home. If I leave that thing, I got to go back and get it. So I've been out there many a times, and I've called buck deer back to me. Now, I haven't really identified maybe of calling the same buck back to me, because lots of times when they're running, you can't identify him. And then 15 minutes later, you've done called another big buck back to you, and sometimes two. So that's another piece of advice I got for you. If you're still hunting in an area and you startle a buck deer, you need to set up and hide. Okay. I know this sounds like something's not true, but it's worked for me. Probably 10% of the time I've scared deer. And I know that's not a big number, but why not try? So I've done everything but waved a white flag like a deer tail, drop rocks out of trees to make it sound like acorns. But I kick the ground, I throw leaves, I shake trees, I blow a sequence of about 3 deep grunts, and then I'll be quiet. And then the next thing you know, I got a buck deer coming back to me, and it liable to be 10 or 15 minutes, or it liable to be simultaneously, he liable. So I don't know if it's the same deer. It could be another deer that was there with him. It didn't see me, because it's hard to believe a deer seen a human and he ran off and then he came back to me. But so I really can't prove that one, but I can prove that if you try that, I believe it works. So I think I'm calling the same deer back to me lots of times, because he just didn't know what I was.
Yeah, and that's also a good point. I feel like that, if you're in the deer, a lot of times maybe there's more deer nearby, and that commotion of a buck like running off, or just a deer running off, along with you making that call sequence, you got to think about what that might sound like to the deer over the next ridge. He's like, man, what's going on over there? Like, sounds like someone's getting chased. Sounds like something interesting's going on.
It's like last year, okay? And the call sequence is not. It was really early in the morning. I was walking down a log road, and I seen a really big deer go across the road. I couldn't tell what it was, but I knew it wasn't a doe. So I sat down and got me a tree to shake, and I got ready, and I established a few of the calls, and I was kicking leaves and shaking that tree, and I was acting really like you shouldn't act out. I was making all kinds of racket. And about 2 minutes, it done crossed this trail. It come back out in the trail and turned and looked at me, and it was all I could do not to shoot this deer. It was really, really big. It was just didn't have no eye guards. It was a 6-point, and it was big. So it just stood there. So I aimed, and it didn't startle and run. It went back in the woods. So as I progressed down the log road, it was still there because I blowed it about 3 more times as I was walking, and then I scared it. So I called that deer back out in the road. I know that was the same deer, but see, it didn't see me. It went across, and I called him back out. So them grunt calls work up there in the mountains. So.
I want to talk way more about the calling aspect, just because I think this is really fascinating. But before we do, Sonny, I want you to talk to us and explain for the listeners, what is the habitat and the terrain like where you're at? Like the vegetation, is a lot of hardwoods? Is it pines? Is it open woods? Is it thick? Is there a lot of rolling hills? Is it really steep? To give us and our listeners an idea of really what are you working with when it comes to slip hunting in your area of Arkansas?
Okay, well, you just about hit them all when you said that, because I push myself into every one of those areas. I don't exclude anything because, even the really open areas, that's somewhere I can see. And I will sit on the edges of those areas sometimes. So I don't exclude anything. And yes, it is, I don't know the elevation that I hunt in, but some of it's really steep. And so I like every bit of it. And I hunt on the edge of the thickets, and I even go into the thicket sometimes and just climb up in the thicket, and I will look back out into the openings. But I want to be in there where he's living because, I think that's where he hides at. When deer turn nocturnal on your cameras or you're not having any luck, and the cameras tell you that the deer are there, either they've done moved so far away from you chasing does in a different area because there's no hot does in your area, or they're just laying down hiding and moving at night. So the terrain, there's oak trees everywhere where I hunt. Okay. Like last year, there were so many acorns, however they like to pronounce it, that it was astounding. There was nothing you could do to pattern a deer. They were everywhere. Every tree had acorns. It didn't matter what brand it was, it had them. So, and normally where I hunt's like that anyways. Like down south, it was slim pickings on the oak trees or the acorn trees. And when you would find one, you would hunt it, and then you have real good success with a deer coming to it. But where I hunt, that don't work. You just have to get out there and find some fresh buck sign. And I like staying up on top of the mountains or at the very bottom of the mountains and utilizing the vantage points of those areas in that terrain. So.
Now, one other thing I want to explain for the listeners as well. A lot about what we're talking about, Sonny, is a little bit more kind of that pre-rut time frame. You mentioned in the last episode that you really like to muzzleloader hunt. Come gun season out there, it gets a little crazy with dog hunters and everything else that happens. And typically muzzleloader season in Arkansas is typically mid to late October. October. So that's kind of the time frame we're talking about here. Do you ever have success slip hunting during archery season? I was just curious.
Well, no. I have a Raven crossbow, and I've tried to go out and do that a few times, and I haven't had the time here lately since I've bought the bow. But no, I've carried a compound bow around with me through the woods a lot, and I never got lucky enough to Usually I scare them off too far away to shoot at them. So, but I'm out there, and I hate to go out there, which I will not go out there. If there's a deer season open, I'm not going out in the woods without a weapon, even to use the restroom. I'm going to take my weapon with me to use the restroom. I'm not letting it out of my hand because I don't want the opportunity to get away from me if it presents itself. So, but I do like the muzzleload season. We're lucky because that is when the rut has started and sometimes is peaking. It might be a first round. I don't know, but that's when a lot of the buck signs on the ground where I hunt. And then I have nobody bothering me. There's no hunting pressure, like none. There's nobody around. I'm so lucky. I can't believe I've found spots like this. It's thousands and thousands of acres that, there's nobody around. It's just me and some of my cousins. And anyways, that's when I love to hunt.
And see, what's something really funny, I was just going to preface this. I know Andrew's got a ton of questions, and I do want to get back to the calling, Andrew, so don't let me forget this. Mm-hmm. But when I hunted Arkansas last year during the muzzleloader season, I was on a completely different part of the state than you are, but there was none of that. There was none of that sign. None of the bucks weren't laying down scrapes. They weren't laying down rubs, because I came back later in November, and it completely flipped. I mean, completely flipped. Rubs were everywhere, scrapes were everywhere, bucks were on does. But that muzzleloader season, and I hunted a good portion of the muzzleloader season, it was slow, just seeing a ton of does, no buck sign, no even really early rubs. It was just crazy. And maybe really second-guess area until I came back in November, and it had completely changed and had an awesome hunt over there. So that's super fascinating, again, that time of the year that you're really finding a lot of sign. Now, just because you mentioned this early in the podcast, I do want to go back to the calling, and we're going to dive in a lot more with the actual slip hunting tactic. But one thing I've heard, and I'm trying to think, I don't know if we've interviewed – actually, we have interviewed a gentleman from Tennessee who called off the ground a whole bunch, had success, Damon Bungard.
Yep.
So Damon Bungard, this is back in 2019 probably.
Man, you put me on the spot there. Yeah. I was like, my mind was racing. I was like,
about 3 years ago, we interviewed a gentleman who loves hunting off the ground like what you're doing during muzzleloader season in Tennessee, in the mountains, and had a tremendous amount of success calling in bucks by being on the ground. And one thing he talked about is when you're on the ground, you can make all this ground noise that a deer is going to make when he's in the area, specifically like the rustling the leaves, shaking the tree branches, stuff like that. And it's hard to replicate that when you're elevated in a tree stand or in a saddle or anything like that. What do you see as the advantage of being on the ground and being able to call and make all that ground noise like what you had mentioned earlier on in this podcast?
Well, obviously, if you're in a tree and you try to make those noises, he'd probably zero in on you and no, that's a fake. That's not real. The advantages are, like you said, you can fake being a deer. Okay, he doesn't know what's going on unless he visually sees you. And I need to film myself out in the woods when I do this because I actually show out. I mean, I'm probably doing too much, and you wouldn't believe I throw sticks and leaves way up in the air and they're flying because I've seen buck deer do it. They get mad. I try not to get up where they can see me. I stay down hid. So I shake the tree vigorously. I just do all kind of stuff. And it makes them mad. And anyways, it's a really good tactic that you can't utilize it everywhere, though, guys. It don't work everywhere, but it works. It might work more than 10% of the time. But the only thing I've not practiced myself is just doing it without seeing a buck deer. It's a practice of mine or a deer. Now, if I start with deer while I'm still hunting or slip hunting, obviously I try to do it 100% of the time now. Okay, unless I know it's a doe or a deer I don't want to take. But if it is a buck deer, I will try to go ahead and see if there's another deer there. I freeze. I don't move anymore because I've walked up on 2 buck deer before and only one of them see you and the other one doesn't know what's going on. So I think that's where I'm calling some of those deer back. Like I mentioned before, it might not be the same one. So yeah, it's a big advantage of being on the ground. You're where he's at. He thinks you're a deer until you mess it up. He doesn't know.
Sonny, I want to talk about what some of these calling sequences actually are and what they sound like. But when you're saying you're on the ground, I can relate to that. I mean, one time I was trying to rattle, and I didn't think I was being loud enough, and because everything was kind of wet, and I was trying to kick up leaves like you were talking about, and dude, I mean, I field goal kicked. I mean, I put my whole leg into kicking like an ant bed, and it was built around a pine stump, and I broke my big toe, rattling in the woods. So yeah, like
Did you get ants on you?
No, I just
Was it
hit
a
the
real
ground
ant bed?
like someone shot me with a 270. It hurt so
Well,
bad. Broke my
I don't
toe.
know if I threw a fit like that before, but I don't really have nothing special, guys. I might do a grunt, snort, squeeze every once in a while. My cousin done that. We was in Illinois, Michael, and he was up above me filming one day, and we had seen a buck deer go out there and lay down, and I never heard nobody make that noise before. He made that noise. It almost upset me because I thought he was running the deer off because I didn't know what that was. And he ended up getting that deer off the ground. And then I had a rattle bag, and I started rattling it when he'd tell me to. And we were videoing Bob Robbins' camera. He's a famous celebrity here in Arkansas. He's passed away now. He was a radio announcer and put footage on his TV show. And we called the deer back up to us. And the last time I rattled, it fell out my hand and fell out and hit to the ground. Well, when it did that, the deer stopped. But he was way too close, and it was a really big 12-point. But it wasn't big enough for me. I was in Illinois. I was trying to kill a big one. So it works. But my sequence of calls, I hit it 3 times on a deep grunt. I don't know how to do anything else, guys. And then I'll hit it 3 more times. And at the most, I hit it 9 times, and I shut up. It's just, that's about all I do. I don't do a bleat call much or none. I do have a bleat box. You know, sound like a baby crying to me. I've never actually heard a doe do that. I've heard a doe like scream in the woods like a girl. And I watched her do it. I don't know what she's doing. It was really spooky. And she was, ah! And I know I'm on video, but I'd have never thought a deer was doing that. But I've only heard babies make that noise that box is doing. But I try to throw it in there once in a while, but I've never caught a deer with the bleat box. So,
And so when you're doing that grunt sequence, how long might you wait between those grunting sequences? Like, are you going to give it 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour? Do you have like a typical cadence, or is it just kind of whatever the situation calls for?
well, if you've not seen a deer and you're just grunting out of the tree stand or grunting off the ground, you haven't seen a deer yet. Like lots of times when I'm in a deer stand, I'll make that call. If I just see a deer and don't know what it is, I see some deer leads walking by. I don't wait long at all if I don't get a response, but I'm really, really still. And I might even turn the grunt call and call backwards with it where it doesn't pinpoint me if the deer's done snuck up on me and I do not know it. But if I've scared a deer, I give him heck. I'll call 3 times and I'll wait 60 seconds and I'll call 3 more times and I'll wait 2 minutes. And then after about the 3rd sequence of it, if I haven't seen anything, then I'll go quiet. And sometimes the deer still show up later on, 15 minutes later, the deer comes back in there sneaking. He's either thought he's got downwind of me or something, and he'll show back up. But lots of times, they're not big enough to shoot, but I still call them back.
Now, Sonny, another thing I want to ask you, in this call sequence, specifically grunting, how often are you incorporating that ground noise? Is it every sequence you're making some kind of ground noise, whether it's raking the leaves, it's shaking a sapling or something, or do you just do it kind of, every so often?
When I'm doing it, I'm so excited. Lots of times I don't even know what's happening because I've already seen a buck deer or I've seen a potential buck deer or what I think. It's every one of them. I grunt 3 times. I shake the tree. I throw leaves. And then I might shake the tree and grunt 3 times and then throw leaves, throw a stick, whatever. But I don't really rattle much. I haven't had a whole lot of success with that in Arkansas. Now, the other states, like in Kansas and Illinois, yeah, you can hear deer fight up there. I've very rarely ever heard a deer hear fight, maybe. But up there, you can hear them tingling horns out there and the rattling works better when you go out of state. But Arkansas, I don't even carry my rattle bag anymore with me. It's I've not scored off of that, so I took it out the bag. It was too heavy.
Now, also, so you're incorporating the ground noise and everything with your calling sequence. You just mentioned that you don't have a lot of success rattling. That was another question I was going to ask you. But one thing you've mentioned so far is when you're hunting off the ground and you kind of bump into one of these deer, like you see it's a buck or you suspect it's a buck, that's when you're calling. Do you ever call blind in an area where you don't actually see a deer, but there should be one close? Do you ever incorporate calling in that situation?
No, only if I'm in an area where I can see a long ways. Like I said, that deer's looking for me. And if I give him an indication that I'm there, even though I'm trying to fake him out, he liable to see me first. And just my train of thought, And so, because I'm moving, I'm only setting up for a little while and I'm moving. I'm not just ground hunting, I'm slipping. So I try not to ever make a sequence of calls unless I've already startled an animal, because he'll be coming towards me and then I'm coming towards him, and then I'll lose the opportunity to tell what he is, or he can take an ethical shot or whatever I need to do. So the answer is no, I'm not making those calls. Now, if I come up on the top of a mountain really slow, guys, I liable to get down and crawl. And, if I don't know what's coming above, and my cousin Michael, he always wears binoculars, and he'll make us lay down up there and just sit there for a while. And he glasses all over because he knows those deer are laying down in the treetop or they're laying down somewheres. And he spends a while looking for the deer. And that's something I don't utilize too much. I will, when I come to the top of a mountain that's open, I may go ahead and make a few calls, because I plan on sitting there for 20 minutes or 30 and spending some of my day and maybe having my lunch but normally I don't make the calls. I don't want them to know I'm there because I'm mobile and I just don't want them seeing me.
Yeah. So
How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're pretty much only implementing the calls when you potentially bump into a buck and you're trying to bring him back in. Or if you're coming to one of those areas that you can't see all that good, but there's an opportunity, you're going to sit there for a little while, that's when you'll implement it. But on the other side, if you're just kind of slipping your way through, you're not going to implement calling because you don't want to run into that deer.
Yeah, I don't want the deer. If I've actually done my job and called him to me, then he's going to be coming maybe at a rapid pace of speed that he wasn't before, or he's got up out of a bed. And he'll run right into me or something, and it'll ruin my chances of getting him, because he knows where I'm at, and he's got keener senses than I do. And I don't have them. I got, glasses on, and I can see pretty good, and he'll figure me out too quick. That's my train of thought. So
now, Sonny, we've got to talk about how you go about actually slipping through the woods in slip hunting, okay? This is something I've always been fascinated with. I've had limited success. I've actually shot a doe on the ground doing this with my bow, but I've never shot. I don't think I've ever shot a buck on the ground doing what you're talking about. But I've been wanting to, and hunting areas kind of like what you're talking about. We've got some areas here in Alabama that would work out really well. I've thought about doing it in some other states as well, specifically Tennessee. But explain for us to the listeners, if say there's listeners or myself who haven't experienced slip hunting, especially someone that's experienced like yourself, how would you go about explaining how you're actually moving through the woods and working your way back into certain spots that you're wanting to, again, check into? Okay, well,
first off, I'm a firm believer in good camouflage. All right. And I'm a firm believer in new camouflage. Actually, I buy new camouflage every year, and I turn my old camouflage into work clothes. I try to, if I can afford it. Okay. When I'm moving through the woods, probably 90% of the time, 85% of the time, I see the deer when I'm standing still. So therefore, maybe you stand still more and you don't cover as much area. Okay. If you blow through these woods, you're not going to see any deer. You're not going to kill any deer. So don't get excited and think you got to make it a mile and a half, and then turn around and move over and make it a mile and a half back to the truck. Okay. There's potential deer in a half a mile. And if you're out there just walking too fast and not taking your time, sitting down, staying hid, and you try to be quiet, even though they say you walking through the woods could be the sound of a deer. I don't care. I don't want him to know I'm there. I want to be really quiet. So, you navigate around things, you make your movements slow, and don't break sticks and don't shake limbs until you are established and you want to try to call that deer. Just don't hang on stuff. Don't get tired. You only got so many days to hunt. Don't go out there and goof off. Go out there and go really slow and try to find a deer before it finds you. It's really fulfilling if you can find a deer before it finds you. And then, then you get to sneak up on it. If you'd like to, the buck deer, you don't really sneak up on them much. They're usually just pop out and they're chasing something. They're on their way somewheres. And every once in a while you'll find one laying down, and that's a treat.
Sonny, when you're slipping through the woods, are you trying to stay hidden behind anything? Like, are you looking at a tree and you're saying like, hey, I'm going to walk to that tree, stand there for a minute, then walk to this tree and kind of take cover with a tree? Or are you trying to stay low behind cover? Or are you just kind of walking out through the open and then just stopping and standing there for a little while?
Yeah, well, obviously, yeah, I am pinpointing different trees to head towards, because whenever I do stop, I have to have a shooting point or a hiding point. And if it's a big area, a big open area, unless that's the direction I'm going, try not to go through the open. Okay. I'll get over on the edge of the thicket and put me a backdrop to me, something besides daylight, or I might slip in and sit in that thicket, because you're sitting out in the wide open and you picking your nose or something. You're not paying attention. You're not hunting hard enough. He's going to see you. So hide yourself every time you're going to establish a 10 or 15 minute set or more. Now, if you're just going to stop for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and that's usually what I do. I'll walk for 2 minutes and then I'll stand for 2 or 3 minutes. And that's kind of a process that I do when I slip hunt. And, most of the time I scare the deer. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I hardly ever catch that deer before that deer catches me, unless I have a vantage point that's, a couple hundred yards. It's just, that's what they do. They look for predators. They're looking for us. So I guess that's why I've moved into trying to call those deer back. And when I had success with it, it kind of tickled me. I didn't think you could really do something like that. But it really does work. I'm proof that it's worked. I've actually killed a deer doing that. I haven't killed a bunch of them calling them back. I've missed a few, shot a tree, but I've called a really nice 8-point back to me. I missed a big 12-point once, and I had scared a really big buck deer walking down the road, and I throwed a fit, and it started hooking trees, but I'm not sure it was the same deer, because I thought I heard the deer run up the mountain and knock rocks down. And when I finally got the deer, it was so exciting. The deer was hooking everything out there. From me throwing leaves, shaking trees, and making that little sequence. When I shot, I shot a tree, and I didn't take the animal, but I killed 8-point same day. I was on the same road, walked another couple hundred yards down it, buck sign. It was all fresh, so I decided to sit down. Sat down and made the call again. Then a doe come down the trail behind me with a 6-point. Don't think the call done anything to it, and it left. Then I made the call again, and then the big 8 come down, and it might have just been following the same path of the doe that was probably an estrus, but I thought I called it, so I counted that one.
Now, what is it that leads you to an area that makes you think that it's worth going and slip hunting through? What are you looking for, maybe on a map or as you're driving down the road and you see something that catches your eye and you're like, you know what, I think if I go slip through here, I'm going to find deer?
Okay, well, most of the places in the national forest, you're not allowed to ride your four-wheelers or nothing like that. And so here's a good tip. I look at maps or Onyx, and I try to find big parcels of land that do not have roads leading to them. Okay, if I do not have that, then there's roads cutting off. There's little pullovers to pull over on, and to go all the way to the end of the road and park. Okay, quit doing that. That's what everybody does. Don't pull over in a pullover spot. That's what everybody does. There's your hunting pressure. Or year after year, somebody's pulled over there. Okay, now ride down the road and roll your window down. Look for a hook tree, just a hook tree, or a scraping, whatever, a rub. That's what I get them mixed up. I call them hook trees. I never call them the other. And then pull over in the ditch, even if it's on the highway. If you're on a highway and your national forest is right there, you never know where that buck deer is hiding. If he's not getting bumped out or pushed, and people right straight up a straight hill, and nobody's ever pulling over there. If it's legal to pull over in the ditch, you pull over there and go out to that shiny tree you see and research that area right there, because there's probably nobody hunting there in that vicinity. But you just can't go to the wore out spots. Every road that's got a place to park and turnarounds and things like that. So I try to stay away from people. Therefore, maybe I'll kill a more mature buck, or I'm hunting a deer that's not as talented. He ain't seen as many humans yet.
Now, are you looking for anything habitat-wise that tells you that deer are going to be in the area? So it sounds like first and foremost you're trying to get away from pressure, but are you looking for the presence of thickets, the presence of like oak trees or anything like that?
Well, like I said before, there's so many oak trees I have to just about count them out. Actually, that's where you'd want to hunt, because that's their food. They got to have food, a girlfriend, and water. I heard that somebody else say that one time, but I killed like 165 something inch 14 point 2 years ago. I hadn't had much success, guys, in the last couple of years. I've had some really dry runs on the muzzleloading hunt, and I hope it turns around for me. I've let a 1 9-point go in the last couple of years. That was actually a nice shooter, and I was hunting with my daughter. But I killed him in a pine field. Nothing but them little purple berries that they bite the buds off the end that the raccoons eat, and you see it in their feces. There ain't an oak tree nowheres, and it's probably a few hundred acres pine field, and they're mature pines. You could climb any of them with a stand. And the next year, which was year before last, I had more buck deer on my cameras over there than, there were huge ones all the time, most of them nocturnal or when season wasn't open. But I still haven't had a success there. Me and my cousin Michael's tried the video there, and we'll see a doe or something small. Killed a monster buck deer in a pine field. Just because the buck sign was there, I would have never hunted that. And I could see really good, and I seen him coming a long ways off, and I was able to get prepared. And when he walked out in the log road to check one of those scrapes, that's the deer I took, and it was standing in front of somebody else's game camera. But I never have met up with that individual to see if it actually took the picture. But there's a game camera 15 yards from where I shot the animal. So I wasn't hunting there by myself. It was too much buck sign.
Now, another question I'm really curious about is, after you've slip hunted through an area, do you ever return to an area if it was good or you saw the right kind of sign, or are you always just kind of nomadic and going to the next thing?
Oh no, obviously, if I see what I call the hot spot buck sign in the area, I'm not leaving it till I kill a deer most of the time, because I know, or I eventually see what's there. If you find those ponds, you find 10 of them that's right there in one area, and they're all fresh, and they got deer tracks in them, and they got tinkle in them and deer poop and stuff like that. And you don't want to leave that area. There is way too many wild women there, and the guys are hanging out. I promise you. So don't leave that area and don't stink it up. Don't walk all over the place anymore. Like I probably told y'all before, if you ever find it, hunt there to dark. Don't leave. Make sure you should have had that lunch. Should have had something to pee in your thing. And it was right in the middle of the day when you want to go back and you found it. If you have to go back, go back. But sneak out the way you come in. Go get you something to eat. Come right back in there. Maybe establish something while you were there, like a tree, and try to scoot up, so you can get a vantage point. If not, hunt on the ground, whichever's better. If you don't make any noise, you're great.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that was where I was wanting to go next. So you're saying if you hunt your way into a spot and you find that really hot sign, specifically scrapes, which I really want to talk about, you're gonna stop and you're gonna hunt that until dark, and you're gonna hang out on that sign.
yeah, that's what I'm fixing to do. I am not leaving that unless I had a prior engagement. Because I've already walked in there, okay? And if I haven't busted him out or I haven't disturbed him, I've accomplished getting in there, okay? And if I have, then I have. But if I go back out and back in, he was just a block over checking some more because he's all over the place. I've just found a few of them. They're in other places. So I'm going to hunt it until dark, and then I might give it a day, and then I'm going to establish something to climb, and I'm going to sneak back in there again, and I'm going to hunt him again in the next day. And if I'm too excited, I might go back the next morning. So,
okay, that was going to be my next question. What, like, when you come back in, like, will you just keep hammering that spot until either you kill him or that sign dries up?
No, not unless I'm not going to hammer that spot to death, due to the fact, you'll get lucky and kill a big buck deer when there ain't no buck sign, because my cameras show them moving all over the place, coming by, like pollens be there every single year. Okay. And, I've had big buck deer just walk by there and not even look at those pollens. So they travel too much during the rut. So I know if I walk in there, I know that deer's going to smell me. You can try to hide. You can try to hide from him. He's going to smell you no matter what you put on, okay? You don't smell right. You can put on whatever. He's going to smell something in your clothes, unless, high dollar scent lock stuff. That's great. But, he's still going to stay out of there some. Just don't wear it out. The more you do it, and I don't know how smart they are. I mean, he might see me and he might come back the next day because, they can't think right when it's breeding season. So I don't know everything about it. I just try.
Yeah. So, all right, Sonny, this is my bread and butter. This is what I love. I love talking about sign and especially scrapes or pawns, as you call them. Now, what does it look like when you walk into that spot where it's undeniable and you're like, yep, it's like 11 a.m. and you're like, I'm sitting here until dark, even if I'm hungry, like whatever. What does that sign have to look like for that to trip the trigger in your brain?
Okay, well, it'll look like there's 10 buck deer there, 10 different buck deer. It'll be so many pollens, they'll all be fresh. You'll think you scared them all off. You'll think they're in a pen. If you ever find that, you'll know it. And sometimes it'll be down the log road or they'll be off the log road, but you'll find so many numerous places that they pawed the ground. There'll be wet urine in them. I got a big nose. Okay. See? All right. Well, I can actually smell it sometimes. I'm not kidding. I can smell the dorsal glands on them or where they, peed in the pollen or whatever. And, you'll know it when you find that many. It don't happen very often. About every 3 years you'll find that spot. But you got to run your cameras too. I know you want to talk about that because I got a pretty good camera story on a pretty good buck deer later when we talk about that. But you see what I'm saying? When you find that much buck sign, it's every bit of it's fresh. You can't believe there's not one staring at you right now. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, we're fighting over questions now. I'm really curious. Do you draw any kind of distinction between scrapes? So, like, you talked about logging roads a couple times, and a lot of times, especially, I'm sure it's the same where you're at. Like here in Alabama, you'll be walking down a logging road in some pines or something, and it'll be like scrape, 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 going all the way down it, and they're all like this big, about the size of a basketball. But then,
Yeah.
but then in other places, you'll find a scrape that's like the size of this table we're sitting in front of, and it's got 5 licking branches, and it's deep into the ground. Do you put any credence on that scrape over the other kind, or what do you think about just different kinds of scrapes?
What the bigger scrape is, guys? Okay, it's more frequently visited by different bucks. This is my camera showing me stuff like that. This is not me guessing. Okay, if it's deeper in the ground, it's been there for a few years. Because normally when you watch a buck deer make a scrape, and I get to do it a bunch because I don't take the buck deer that I watch. I get to watch them rear up to the limbs. When they're broke off and hanging down, lots of times they bite that. That is not their horns doing that. They'll reach up and grab that with their mouth and break that limb off and drag it down to the ground. Okay, it's on my video cameras. I always thought they got it hung in their horns and thrashed it, which they do, and that's how the limb got broke. But nope, they'll bite that limb and it's broke off because they bit it. So the big pawings, oh yeah, it's exciting because there's more buck deer been there. Because usually the buck deer don't stay there very long. Okay, very seldom will you see him get bad aggressive and just tear the ground up and eat all the bark off the trees. And usually he just pops it a couple times, smells the limb, see if the doe's been there, and the doe leaves scent up there too, or he'll smell the paw. He moves on and he's putting a track out. So when you see a bunch of them down the log road, that ain't the only ones there. If they're all fresh, they're off to the side too, because he's just not staying on that log road, and he's not by himself is the deal. There's a bunch of buck there because there's does there they're in estrus, and that's my belief. That's the reason the pollens are so hot. They're trying to find them.
All right, so Sonny, with you kind of explain this, Andrew, we experienced this last year on our SOA hunt.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
yep.
So we had a hunt last year that was the best hunt I've ever had in Alabama, bar none. I think we saw, was it 11 bucks we saw?
Yeah.
In literally 2 days or something like that. In this one location, this one spot. Come to find out, we were kind of hunting high up on a secondary ridge point, kind of watching this drainage system. And we didn't realize this until we shot 2 mature bucks in the same spot within an hour and a half of each other. I actually used Andrew's gun to shoot the second buck he shot his first one. And when we went down to recover the deer, it was like what you're saying. There were scrapes literally everywhere. If there was a licking branch,
and you could smell them.
There was a scrape, and you could smell it. It was like a huge congregation of scrapes in this one area. But also, we had witnessed the morning we shot the 2 bucks, a hot doe coming in there with 5 bucks on her butt, and watching one of the 3.5-year-old bucks, which wasn't the biggest deer in the group, actually breed her on camera next to one of these scrapes, and they get chased off by 2 other bucks. And this was all in this one little area. And the funny thing is, we had hunted around this for a day and a half beforehand, did not see any of that sign, and we happened to kind of ease our way into the spot, kind of like what you're talking about. We actually kind of were slip hunting our way in.
We did, and we saw a doe.
Saw 2 does.
Yeah, saw 2 does and stopped and shot up a tree.
Shot up a tree, and then that afternoon, we won't talk about because we mentioned it 100 times on the podcast, but
I missed a biggin that afternoon. A biggin.
You missed it? You shot and missed?
Oh, I shot a couple times and missed.
Hey, Sonny, and it's all on camera. Listeners will see this footage at some point this year.
Oh, man. Unless I just accidentally delete it.
But where I'm trying to get at, Sonny, is this is the one time we've experienced kind of what you're talking about. And it seems like, from how you're talking about this, this isn't something you necessarily find every single year. But when you find that spot, you better hold on tight and put some time into that location.
Yeah. You're not gonna find that every single year. You might find it, consecutive years, just because you're getting lucky. That's the reason. That's another reason I slip hunt. Okay. I'm actually looking for that spot. I am never going to go out and just climb the same tree every year or get in a box stand every year. It's never going to happen. For one reason, I'm not allowed to do that in the national forest. I mean, I'm allowed to go climb the same tree, but, I'm not going to be in a deer camp anymore, even though I just joined one. I've been waiting 6 years. It's by my house. But if you ever find that spot, and if you're not finding it, quit hunting over those cold scrapes. And if you have more acreage to visit it slip hunting, but you got to go slow. And if you ever kill a doe, I mean, if you ever kill a buck that's chasing a doe, breeding a doe, or trying to breed a doe, or whatever, and you know that doe's hot, or you got chasing. I've had up to four bucks chasing one doe at one time. Just I felt sorry for her. You know, I've seen that numerous times, more than one buck chasing them, and they just chase them to death where they can't breathe. That's when you wear a spot out. Okay, if you find that doe that's hot, you come back an hour and a half before daylight, get there, and you can't see at night, and the next day you come back, and the next day you come back until you quit seeing deer. Don't ever wear that spot out, because they don't care if they smell you or not when that's happening. So that's my advice when you wear a spot out. It don't matter if there's a buck sign there or not. If she's there, they're going to find it. That's just what they do. That's their nature. It's breeding season. So hot doe is the best thing you can do right there.
Now, Sonny, another thing that's kind of interesting, because you're mentioning you've typically seen some really good rutting activity in October, during this muzzleloader hunt, which, from other guys I've talked to in Arkansas, some see a little bit of rutting activity and a lot don't, depending on the part of the state that they're in, because the rut is kind of different in different areas of the state. But do you ever think that some of the rutting activity you're seeing isn't necessarily all the does coming to heat, but there's just that one or two doe that comes in heat maybe a little bit earlier than all the rest, and when you walk in and find that doe, that's when you're finding all these additional bucks in this one little area instead of having mature bucks running everywhere on that mountain?
Well, obviously I don't really know, and I know all the does don't come into estrus at the same time. The Game and Fish has it figured out pretty well, and it is due to the area that you're hunting in. A lot of the southern counties of our state, you might as well wait till rifle season when November's coming around, because it's not happening. You're just down there hunting, free. Yep. But up where I hunt, it's just getting started, and I think that's what's happened to me the last couple of years. It hadn't started yet. I've missed it. It probably happened the next week or the next week. So they can't get it perfectly right every year. Might have something to do with the moon phase.
Now, real quick, Sonny. Now, one thing that's different, not to get too specific at Arkansas, but I noticed this year, look at the new regs, they moved the muzzler hunt back. I believe it's pushed back like 3 or 4 days, so it's going to go 3 or 4 days longer than it has the last few years. And I wonder if that's going to help a little bit more when it comes to catching some of that more rut activity, because I've wondered with you, because that muzzleloader season is only 10 to 14 days, something like that in length. It's not very long. Do you normally see that rutting activity later in the muzzleloader season, or do you sometimes see it early on in that muzzleloader season?
Well, there again, they ain't got the date set perfect, but they're trying to. Actually, I don't know where you was specifying where, but this year they're opening it on my birthday, which is October the 21st. Okay, and that's later. It's been opening around the 15th or 16th or somewhere, so it's almost a week off.
Yes,
5 or 6 days off, somewhere around there. So I'm actually a little excited about it, because I think I've been missing it because I ain't been seeing all the fresh buck sign. And I think I've been going too early, but I don't have a choice. I got 9 days this year. It's usually a 9-day season, and then it shuts down for a few weeks, and then they open up the rifle season, and it lasts about a month and a half, where I'm at 5 weeks maybe. Yeah, in some areas it only lasts 3. So I'm pretty geared up, because I hadn't killed one in a couple of years, and I'm going to be probably alone this year. I'm not going to have anybody with me. I'm going to be able to do what I want to do. I take a bunch of kids hunting and different people, and it takes some of my time out. But, they done it for me, like my dad. And so I'm gonna kill one this year. Y'all want to bet?
Oh, listen.
Y'all put $1 on it?
Dude, I'll put
I'm
on
gonna kill a 135 class deer in Arkansas, or 140 this year. I just got a feeling.
I'm going to push I'm pushing all my chips in. I'm betting on you. I'm betting on you, Sonny. No, I think so too, because that's what I noticed. That's what I saw. I knew it was like October 20th to 21st they removed the season, and typically, like you said, it's been like the 15th roughly the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if it's going to be that much better for you because of that. And also got me thinking. Like my sibling, my sister. Her wedding is October 28th, and I was telling her, "Why did you pick that week? What are you doing?" So I would be in Arkansas potentially at that time, but because of me being in the wedding, I can't, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Man, can't skip out on that one.
If you love me, you'll get married during deer season.
No, because then you got an anniversary that same week, same
Don't
day
love you
every
that
year.
much. So,
Actually, okay, not to get too sidetracked here. Sonny, you had mentioned you're earlier. You're at your fiance's house. When's y'all's wedding date? Are y'all getting married during deer season?
no, we're not getting married during deer season. I'll put my foot down. It ain't that big of a foot, but it'll get put down. So, I ain't getting married during deer season. So, no. I ain't getting married yet, but I am still getting married. I got a wonderful fiance. She's top notch. So, she lets me do what I want to do.
One other thing I wanted to mention when we were talking about slip hunting, because I do want to kind of talk about cameras and stuff, but with slip hunting, you had mentioned quite a few times in this podcast about seeing these bucks crossing logging roads. How often are you using logging roads to get further back and using that as slip hunting versus kind of just working your way through some timber that's maybe not on a logging road?
Well, that's what you do if you're trying to get away from humans. So you'll start out on a logging road because it's a path of least resistance. And lots of times you score on it, even you just got right off the highway. So, yeah, I use the logging roads to get somewheres away from the traffic or whatever. And then I branch out into the woods. And I still love any kind of a logging road or whatever the humans have put there in the past to travel on, or it's just what deer travel down. Y'all mentioned y'all's word was a corridor. I just call it a deer trail, or they're gonna go down it, and that's where they're gonna lay the majority of their buck sign is on that logging road or the top of a hill, okay, or the bottom of the hill, but not right in the center. They'd like to go left and right of that center for some reason, especially if there's a creek in it or whatever. They stay left and right of it. You'll find it, but the logging road is just where they prefer to do it. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe it's path of least resistance, or they can see better and they're looking. But I guess that's what's happening.
Sonny, also when you're slip hunting, I've got so many questions on slip hunting because the reason why is we don't interview a lot of guys like yourself that do it successfully. So that's why I just have so many questions to ask you. When you're slip hunting, especially in this more mountainous terrain, do you like keeping the high ground most times, or will you drop off down in like a drain or something, or will you go through a valley? How do you like to kind of work your way through, like, to maybe a certain destination you're trying to get to? Do you like to stay high? Will you go down low sometimes? What's your thought process on that?
Well, let me explain to you what I see when I'm out there, okay? If I'm on the top of the ridge, usually they're too broad on the top. And so I have a very limited viewpoint of seeing deer. Okay. So, but when I go over to the edge of the top, I can't see both sides. That's where the climbing stand comes into play. But I don't go down the top because I can't see. And it depends on what it looks like. And then as you work your way down to the bottom, you can see the other mountainside over there. So you score twice. So, usually there's too many trees in the way to be at the top to see the other one. Your foliage. Okay. So the bottom is better when you're slip hunting because it opens up more vantage points for you because you're looking underneath the stuff and looking up. That would be my advice, is to stay down lower where you can see both sides of the hills if they're there, and even if you're at the top of the hill and you can't see both sides of the hill, and it just keeps going down, keep down, go halfway down and run down it. But you want to be able to see the top now because they like the top. So keep the top in your eyeballs, and they like the bottom. So does that make any sense?
Yeah, and
the bottom's better if it's got another mountain coming. Go down in the bottom, you can see both mountains. It gives you more acreage to watch.
Now, also, I got so many questions.
That's not something we hear very often.
Yeah, we don't hear that very often at all.
Stay low.
Yeah, stay low. Now, how are
Well,
you?
it's you're in the mountains, you can see. Okay, if you're on top of that mountain, you can't see the top of that next mountain because the leaves are in your way. Get down below the leaves and look up at them and find that vantage point. And now you're looking up at both sets of hills, and I can see 5 times as far or 3 times as far as I could before. So it increases my odds of seeing a doe or anything. Then I can be still and get ready because now I'm ahead of them. So yeah.
Do you often see bucks running does downhill as well, like kind of pushing them down into the ball?
Yeah, when they're chasing them, they'll run off a cliff. It don't make a difference. They'll come up a rock hill. You'd have never thought a deer would have come up that hill, and it'll come up that rock hill. So no, they don't care where they're at. They'll run them through the water. It doesn't make a difference. Any terrain, they're gonna take it.
Now, how are you taking wind direction into consideration when you're working, especially down low? Because we hear a lot of guys talking about hunting up high because it's a little more consistent wind. What is your thought process on wind direction, the wind maybe swirling in some of those areas? What is your take on that?
Well, there's nothing you can do about your swirling wind, okay? And I try not to worry about my wind when I'm in a stand because I don't know which way the deer's coming from anyways. Okay, so I don't hunt edges of fields and planted food plots and things. I'm there's woods around me. So, but when I'm still hunting, I do take that in consideration any way I can. That's where I drop myself off in the morning. If I know the wind is blowing against me, I'm going to walk that way to start with. I'm going to set myself up. Now, halfway through the day, I got to come back to the truck or come back to somewhere. And hopefully the wind might have changed to help me out. But there's nothing I can do. But I sure don't want to start the first half of my day walking with the wind and letting the deer smell me. Because I do believe their nose is, their best feature. I guess everybody believes in that one. I mean, they can hear good, but they can't hear me talking to them when I'm whispering right there at them. So, but they'll smell you in a heartbeat. And seeing, they're going to see, but they can't see as well as we can. So set yourself up when you're slipping. Okay, put the wind in your face best you can. Look at your weather the day before you pull your thing up and check it. And yeah, I do the wind when I walk. I do.
Now, do you stress out if you're, say, down low and the wind starts hitting you at the back of the head? Do you worry about that, especially if you're thinking the deer's up higher where they maybe can't smell you? Or do you do you just keep on going?
I don't have time to recuperate on wind change. I've already set some kind of a plan together. Other than if I want to change and not go as deep in the woods and go horizontal. But most wind changes are, they're temporary. They don't last long unless some kind of a storm's coming or whatever. And then I will change if I can tell it's going to stay the same. But usually I just bite the bullet and then I'll go on with my pattern and I just look harder.
Yep.
It's like when I get in a deer stand and I know which way the wind's blowing. Okay, I turn my climbing stand the way where the wind's blowing that way, blowing across my back. So I stare at that way more because the wind's blowing that way, and the deer's going to pick me up quicker because he can smell me. So behind me, the deer can sneak up on me, and I'm going to catch it because it's not going to smell me. So that's how I work the wind in a deer stand. I just watch the way the wind's blowing, unless it's just I can't see very far. So try that one too, because if he can't smell you and you're up in a tree, he'll sneak right up to you and you hear a twig break. You have the time to come around on him. Just don't let him smell you. You might never even see him if he smells you. You'll just think you had a bad day. So.
Also, Sonny, when you're slip hunting, if you think back to all the bucks that you've killed, specifically in Arkansas slip hunting, if you had to break them out, how many of them did you kill, say, early morning versus like mid to late morning, almost like early afternoon, and then late in the evening?
Well, to be honest with you, I probably only killed about 6 or 7 walking because I've only been up in the mountains, and I'm picky about what I shoot. Usually I kill them towards the middle of the day. Is when I kill them. It's kind of like I don't really have hunting pressure, but it's kind of like fishing. everybody fishes till noon. They go in and the fish start biting. I have a lot of luck in the middle of the day when I'm out there, and obviously deer move in the morning time due to the fact they're nocturnal. Okay, so he messes up sometimes and he ain't got back home. So if you're out there really early and he's trying to get back home or get back to where his bedding area is, and you'll catch him during shooting hours, that's a good. Don't ever not go out there early. Go out there before daylight as much as you can do. Like I said before last episode, seat time. Okay, spend some time in the woods. Go out way before daylight if you're not scared and it's not unsafe. And then when it gets dark, because I don't normally see deer right at dark a lot. It's kind of like a dead zone for me. But stay a little longer and see what happens. But usually then it gets to where it's illegal to shoot, but at least you get to see something. And
yeah, that's interesting, especially kind of like that later morning, almost early afternoon time period that you've had a lot of success. You hear that from so many guys that kill mature bucks, especially down here in the Southeast, that midday period, late morning to early afternoon being the time of the day they kill a lot of their bucks during the rut. And for whatever reason, it seems like those bucks are getting back on their feet. They're covering some ground. It gives you an opportunity in order to be able, whether you're in a stand and you're sitting in the right spot that he should be coming through, or if you're slip hunting and working your way into that spot that should line up for you. It kind of plays out really well. Sonny, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, or me and Andrew want to talk to you about, is the trail camera use. We mentioned this in episode 40, the last episode you were on with your cousin, Michael Ball, and how trail cameras were, a factor for you because you can use them in your area of the state on your public land and kind of finding patterns and just areas that mature bucks are really using. Let's kind of dive back into the topic of your thought process on using trail cameras in the mountains, from the process of what data are you trying to get from that trail camera to use, and are you using it for this season, or is it something that you're going to use for next season based off what you got from the season previously?
Okay, so potentially I tried to start in late August and, put my cameras out because I don't like to be around my cameras. I'm not one that goes and checks my cameras. So a lot of it may be scouting for the next year. Okay. And I potentially run 15 to 20 cameras, and they're all the cheaper brands. They're not just bad cheap, and none of them are singular because there's no cell phone service in the National Forest. So I can't have them respond back to me. But I'll put them everywhere, and I'll have scouting trips, and I'll go out and pre-scout, and my backpack's always full of them. And I got SD cards running on my, So I'll give you I give you an example. I can tell where the big bucks are and where the big bucks are not. Okay. Yes, a big buck is going to travel. Here it goes. All right. So October, I missed him by one day. He come by the next day. He's about a 150 something class, 11 point, and he's not very wide. And he's got kickers on both sides like this. And then one side's got another kicker. He's got eye guards. They're 10 inches long, and his horns just go up. Okay, he's 14 and a half inches wide. He looks kind of funny. He's not wide at all, but he's man, I don't know. He's 20 something, 22 inches tall, 23. He's just way up there, and his eye guards go with it, and them kickers identifies him. So I had him on camera 2 times in October, both times in the daytime. One time was the very next day from me being there, sitting on the ground by a log. I was not slip hunting. I slipped hunted into that spot, and there was a little bud of bucks on there, and I could see. So I stayed there to dark. Wasn't the hot spot, though. I was kind of just tired. Camera flooded. Thought it did. Put it out by boat because it's remote. People don't hunt this place, I thought. So I put the camera out in August. It took a picture August 29th, and it got tired on March 14th, and it quit taking pictures for me. And I just disregarded it because the river there flooded, and I thought it got it. I think February the 3rd, it's 3-something miles away. He's on that camera, the same deer, but it was in the dark. So I'm pretty sure he made it because they don't really hunt that hard up there anyways. Bow season was still open. and I've had deer on multiple cameras that was miles and miles away. That was my biggest one to date. I never had a deer 3 miles away from another camera. Okay. And this might not be how the crow flies, but me just guessing up and down the hills to where the other place was, I'm not going to hunt where there's not big buck deer. Now, this spot here, it had a huge 140 something class 8 point. 90% of all the buck deer were at night from August till March to 14th. So I don't think I want to hunt there. I don't, not right there. I thought I might, but my camera is only in one spot. And there was only one camera, but I don't really think I want to hunt there. So I probably cull that spot.
Sonny, what are you putting your cameras on? Like if you're going out on a scouting day in August and you got a backpack full of cameras, what are you looking to sling those cameras on to watch for the whole season?
Well, so, you know, navigating on your deer corridors or your deer trails, that's obviously a really good spot. Previous patterns of buck signs, that's always a good one because they're going to return to it. This law where sometimes I put them where I shouldn't because other people are going to walk by them, but just somewhere, just the history of being a deer hunter so long, I just know, or seen a bunch of deer tracks in a creek bed where they go down and back up. It's just beat out. So I get that, and I put the camera right there. So I'm looking for where the deer tracks are because obviously there's no buck sign at the time. So sometimes I just find wore out places in the mud or anything. I just don't throw them right out in the wide open. And I wish I could put some feed out or something and then, bring them into it, but it's just not allowed. So you have to really think like a deer. And then you got to keep them off some of the main trails because there's people coming up and down there, and I'm trustworthy, but I've only had actually one camera stolen in about 15 years. So, but obviously if it's a main trail, deer's going to, like a 4-wheeler trail or something, that's easy to do because they're going to paw on it some if it's not going to travel, but just look for deer tracks if it ain't got no buck sign.
When it comes to trails specifically, is there a specific kind of trail that you're looking to put a camera on? Like the reason I ask is some people will say you'll find that really, really heavy beat down deer trail and that's like your doe trail. But then 50 yards off, you'll find that faint trail and that's where the buck is walking. Do you ever target anything like that, or do you target trail intersections or anything else about like trails in a specific way?
Well, I don't know if I've ever heard of a buck in the doe trail. So I do target like areas going into thickets. Okay. If you can walk down the edge of thickets and you can find where the deer's been going in and out of there, due to the traffic of the deer's body or the deer's horns or whatever. And I will go up in the thicket some, and sometimes it'll open up into an opening but it's still thicket all the way around it. And that's kind of like a little playground sometimes for deer. So I will put the camera there in that big opening. There's just things like that. And you're still in a thicket all the way around you, but you found an opening. Actually, it's a good place to hunt too. But now your camera pick up a vast range. So I've found an area, a trail going into it, and probably multiple trails going out of it. But I just don't want it right on the trail because that's a crappy picture or a video. I like to have him see him coming and whatever. And so
now, what about buck sign? You mentioned that you like to put them where you've been seeing buck sign in the past. Are you putting them on those scrape lines? Are you putting them on rub lines or any other kind of buck sign that you're keying in on specifically?
Well, the scrape is the pollen. I don't put nothing on a hook tree. So unless it's a hook tree and a pollen together with it's got to have the broke limb. It's got to have the limb above it and the pollen underneath it. That's the only place that I'm going to put a camera. The hook tree is, there's different reasons for that. There's ripping the velvet off. There's just sporadically walking through the woods and scraping the tree because he's mad or something's wrong with him. So no, I'm going to put it on the pollens. And I do carry cameras around with me while I'm hunting. And even like she said, Jacob said, having success with a bow. I'll find fresh buck sign there, and I'm gonna throw it right there because I just want to see what's doing it, and then I can choose which camera I want to go back to. Okay, but like before, I put them all out, and I don't go check them until October. I leave them alone. So end of August, September. So when my birthday comes around on October 21st, that's when I start hunting my cameras or hunting these locations, and there'll be a couple cameras next to me, and I'll go pull them. I don't take the camera off tree. I don't put it out there. I'll go buy another camera. I change the card, and then I come home to my laptop, and then I might find a really big buck because I want to go over there and just spend some time on. Usually that's a mistake, but that's what I'm after. You zero in on a monster out there, and you'll never see him because he's smart. But I've already killed a bunch of little ones, so I might as well try to kill the big ones. So.
Did you have something?
Yeah. So, Sonny, one thing you mentioned on episode 40 when we first had you on is how you like to use your camera specifically on video mode and not on photo mode. Can you talk to us the reasoning why you like to do that? Because, it takes up a lot more data on an SD card, so you got to be careful with that. But what is your thought process on running your trail cameras on video mode instead of on just a photo mode?
Okay, well, the technology nowadays on these cheap cameras, and you put a big enough card in it, you won't have no problem at all. You'll have more of a battery problem than anything. And if you buy the good batteries, don't, cheat you out. The reason to run it on video mode is, and it's usually like a 10 or 15 second burst, is you see so much more stuff. Okay. I get to see deer fighting. I have that every single year. I get to see bears come up to my tree and lick on the camera and spin it around and bite it, and I get to see them reach up and bite that limb off. Okay, and yeah, your camera might get that in a caption, but you might not even tell what he was doing, or you might not tell that actually happened. I get to see just the action of a doe coming by and a buck chasing it. Okay, you're getting pictures. So I'm watching movies, and I guess that's what I'm trying to tell you. I've seen so much stuff. I've had hoot owls light at nighttime. I've had bears take my cameras off trees and not even hurt them, and sit around and play with them, sit on them, kick them around, turn upside down, and they come back 2 or 3 days at a time. Now, I know we're not talking about deer, but deer don't do that. The bears are really smart out here. We have a lot of bears where I'm at, so I'm not running those snap pictures. I want to see what's happening out there. Like I seen the wood ducks floating by my camera. They were beautiful. I got video of it. I could put it somewhere else and utilize it on my channel or something.
Yeah, speak about trail cameras on video mode. Last year, put a camera out on a slough in Arkansas, the area that we were hunting. Left it, came back and checked it in November. And I was looking at the camera, I'm like, man, because when I put it out, the slough was nearly dry. There's very little water. When I came back, there's a lot of water in it. And I was looking at it. I brought my laptop out in the woods, and I was actually playing it on it to see if I wanted to move the camera or leave it there, because I came back from the muzzleloader hunt, came back during November. And I was like, man, what is on this camera? I'm like, there's a ton of blackbirds on here. And I kept looking, and it was wood ducks. And I mean, like you see blackbirds, and it's like, a couple hundred of them in a group. That's what it was like with these wood ducks flying into this slough and walking up and feeding on water oaks in front of my camera and just walking around and stuff. And it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. But again, you wouldn't get that from just taking photos, which again isn't having to do anything with deer. But one thing we've learned specifically with running video mode on your trail cameras is you get to see the direction the buck is coming, especially to a scrape. What direction is he coming from? And also, what direction is he actually leaving in the direction of? Which to me is extremely helpful. You can kind of tell that on photos, but you don't know when that camera takes that photo, did that deer spin around a little bit? Yep. Did he change?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying because, you can tell what part of the woods he's coming out of and maybe even what part of the woods he's going back into. Mm-hmm. So, it's just way better watching a TV show than it is looking at pictures. You're looking at a book versus watching a movie, and I don't read books much.
Let me ask you this also. So the data that you're getting off your trail cameras, you talk about like, you put them out late August, early September. You'll come and check them roughly mid October, and you get that big buck on camera. Of course, you're going to try to focus in on that area, maybe slip hunt around and try to pinpoint that deer. But also, do you use any of this data, again, the videos that you get of some of these mature bucks that maybe make it throughout the season? Do you take in that information for where you're going to potentially hunt next year, or how you're going to change your camera position for next season? So maybe information you learned from last year, how you're going to apply it for this year, both from hunting, but also where you're going to start putting trail cameras out late in August.
Well, yeah, this is what I do. I only hunt so many thousands of acres, and so I use flash drives because I want to clean my cards up all the time. So I establish all my big bucks, and I exclude the little bucks. So I drop them all on flash drives, and then I go back and I walk my flash drives and I take notes, and I see what times they come by, and I see what dates they come by, what time of the day, and how many I seen from this camera. And then, lots of it I can remember in my head. And so I know where I'm going to go the next year, or maybe later in the season. I've never been real successful bow hunting or up there because, I don't know, they just don't come by right where you want them to. So, and I hadn't had a lot of time to hunt here in the last few years, but I'm going to get to hunt more this time. So, yeah, I compile a little bit on just so I don't have to remember everything because I'm running so many cards. But it tell me where that camera was sitting, but I have to go on my memory by that. But out of 15 cameras, I'll probably put 10 in the same spots every year. And then I'll choose another 10 if I got them, or 5, and I'll put them in new locations. And if I have better luck there, then I migrate cameras into it. And if I find a real big buck, I'll go put cameras all over him and try to watch him. But still, you got to stay away from him or you're going to scare him. So lots of times I think I actually do that to him. I get in there and put too many cameras trying to figure him out, and then he moves over on me or does something. I don't know. I know these people are not killing these deer because I talk to the locals up there that run the dogs, and they say they don't never kill big deer. So I can't believe it.
Also, when it comes to trail cameras, what do you think's maybe some of the biggest mistakes guys may do when they're starting to put out trail cameras and finding locations? Like, I know you probably talked to some other guys that run trail cameras as well. Do you see any common mistakes that people do when they run trail cameras or put trail cameras out that maybe you have like some advice for what to look for in order to be more successful catching that buck actually on trail camera and not missing him?
Well, some of it's just idiotic stuff. You need to point your camera north and south, because if you don't, you're going to have some sunshiny pictures, and they're not going to turn out right. And obviously, everything, there's lots of other stuff that triggers the camera besides the deer. So you need to find, like in Kansas, when we go up there, it's hard to put that camera out anywhere because of the sagegrass. It just does not want to work. It takes pictures so you really got to put it out in open fields or where there's nothing. So you want to set your camera up for success to start with. As far as the location after that, you're going to pick the location out first. But even though that might be the best place to put it, but I know it's going to take pictures of something else. I just can't put it there, or the sun's going to set right there. And when he comes through, it's going to be blinding my camera. So position it due to the sun and other movement around it sometimes hinders where I really want to put it. And basically, guys, it's just I love putting them on them pawings because I know that's a deer with horns. That's the deer I'm after. And I'm pretty sure a lot of them get killed up there, and they're there the next year. So I just go back in there where I seen the next one the next year, and I'll put a camera, and that might be wherever I seen the biggest one. That's where I'm going to hunt the next year, my first morning, if I didn't get a chance to take him the year before.
Sonny, is there anything that we've missed that you wanted to cover on this specific episode? I know we've covered a ton. I'll probably, the second we end this recording, I'll probably have 25 other questions specifically on slip hunting, just because I'm always fascinated by guys that do that. But Is there anything that we potentially missed, or anything that you would want to cover else on this episode?
No, guys, even if there might be another episode in the future. So I got to leave a little bit to talk about. And hopefully I'll have some experiences this year, and I'll have maybe just a story to tell you, because I love telling stories. I hadn't told you many about. I'd like to have a deer hunting story to tell you, and hopefully it's a slip hunting story because you're so fascinated by it. But I'm going to try to do y'all proud and at least do a 135 this year. And I want to thank y'all for having me on your show. I've had a real good time, and I'm new at this. It's only my second one, and I'll have some scenery for you next time if y'all invite me back.
Oh yeah, no, we gotta have you back on.
I'll take you to the museum house, and we'll have plenty of stuff. We may even have to spin around and look.
Yeah, we need to do a whole tour of the, as you call it, the museum house with all your deer, elk, I think you said bear, all kinds of stuff.
Mule deer.
I got a lot of stuff over there, but
that's awesome.
Still stuff on my list.
Absolutely.
I want to kill an antelope, and I'm gonna do that pretty soon. So just to do it.
Absolutely. Well,
Nice.
Sonny, I've greatly appreciated you coming on the podcast. It's guys like you that get me excited about doing the podcast. Again, the average listener probably won't know you unless they're personal friends with you or maybe follow along with you guys on y'all's page. But it's guys like you that are willing to come on that have all this experience, that's willing to share it and really help other guys become more successful. Because I guarantee we're going to get quite a few stories, what we call listener success stories, come from this episode, where guys go out this year for the first time ever, slip hunt, and kill a really nice buck, and then we'll hear about it. And I'll make sure I email you those stories as well.
And I hope something I said lead them to that. I didn't want to talk about wearing fancy camouflage or doing this or a lot of the scent that you wear or the paint on your face. And I was just trying to, do everything possible. I mean, don't leave one thing out. Hunt till you're exhausted, and stay out there. That's my number one tip. Stay out there all the time. Do not come back to the house and take a nap. Take a nap out there, please. Okay? Take a nap on the ground. Okay, guys. I appreciate y'all having me.
Absolutely. Sonny, thank you for joining us. Listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a couple buddies. Leave us a couple reviews as well on iTunes or Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And Sonny, thanks for joining us. And guys, we'll catch you back here for this week's outro, talking about this episode and a lot more. So thank y'all for joining this episode, and we'll catch you back from the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman Podcast.